welcome you all to the webinar on mobile application testing with Zoho QEngine. This is the fourth webinar in the Zoho QEngine 101 series. So before we get into today's session, let's have a quick recap of all that we saw in the previous sessions. So the first session was dedicated towards creating and management of test cases using the Zoho QEngine. In the second webinar, we actually looked at test executions and the result analysis using the Zoho QEngine. And the third webinar was dedicated specifically towards web application testing. And the today's webinar is more towards mobile application testing. So today's agenda for today's session is we'll be starting off with market analysis and the mobile applications, and then we'll be looking at the common issues testers face with mobile application testing, and then we'll be looking at how to create test cases for mobile applications using the Zoho QEngine, and then of course we'll be looking at test executions and reporting and analysis for all of these test executions using the Zoho QEngine. And finally, we'll be looking at the product demo, wherein you will be understanding better how to achieve better user experience using testing with Zoho QEngine. And we'll be achieving that with checking out a couple of use case scenarios. Very precisely, we'll be looking at three real world use case scenarios. So let's start with understanding the state of mobile applications. So mobile applications, everyone knows, most of us use smartphones today, and everyone knows that within the smartphone, no matter how good of a phone that is, without the applications, the smartphone doesn't make any sense. So the applications are the ones which make a lot of sense for any smartphone. I mean, in fact, the applications is what makes them smart to a greater extent. So for any mobile phones that we are talking about, as of now, we have around 7 billion smartphones currently in use, and around 9 million mobile applications, unique mobile applications are currently in use in these 7 billion smartphones. And the entire market size is around $230 billion US dollars. And when I'm talking about the market size, there are two main platforms for mobile applications. One is the Android and another one is iOS. These are the two main prominent operating systems for mobile operating systems, and this is where you will be using your application. So this is where the applications that are created for these platforms is what we'll be testing out today. So apart from this, we see that as many phones are released these days, there are phones that are specific for a particular hardware. Like they bring in a new hardware which has more capabilities, and applications are created specifically taking use of the hardware which is present in these modern smartphones. And understanding all of this, you need to know that the scope of these mobile applications is beyond just one domain or something. It is available across finance, education, entertainment, e-commerce, and everywhere. So let's just quickly take a look at the common issues you face with mobile testing. So whenever a tester is actually creating an application and an application is created, the very first thing they have to worry about is testing it across multiple device combinations. So what do I mean by multiple device combination? So let it be Android or iOS, these mobile devices, each of them run different hardware configuration, and each of them run different version of the operating system. So the application has to work on all the different cases because there are so many mobile phones out there, and the application has to run perfectly on all of them. If not, then it is very difficult for the to get a good achieve a good user experience. So apart from this, there's something called as the hardware compatibility. So what it means is any application which is created specifically has to be compatible with the different hardware. Let's assume that you are creating an application for an Android platform. Doesn't mean that it will run across all of the devices running Android operating system. So hardware compatibility also has to be taken into account whenever an application is created. And as I mentioned already, there are two prominent operating systems, Android and iOS, and the application has to work properly across these two different platforms, of course, you have to create two different applications altogether for iOS and Android. And another important thing with mobile application testing is that uh, whenever an application is created, this cannot be overlooked since we are carrying the mobile devices with us and we carry it with us and we want it to work throughout the day. It is expected that the application which is being created does not hog up battery and battery usage is minimal or optimal. So battery draining is also checked or taken into account whenever an application is created. And of course, dedicated testing is done for checking how much battery is drained. And of course, any application, unlike the native web applications or something like that, any application created on mobile has to look and feel good. It has to work fine. It has to look good, and the user interface is expected to be intuitive, and that is only possible if you do a proper UI UX testing. So that is dedicated to ensure that it not just looks good and it also works just fine. When we talk about mobile application testing, of course, there are three different types of applications. One is a native mobile application. Native as in it runs natively on, let's say, the Android platform or the iOS platform. And of course, then there is the web applications which are built and which run on, let's say, a desktop or a personal computer. It runs on the browser on those devices. The website is also expected to run on mobile devices as well. So the application, which web application which is created for these browsers, is supposed to run perfectly on the browsers of these mobile phones as well, let it be Android or iOS. So that also has to be checked. And finally, there are applications called as the hybrid applications. What these do is they look and feel like a native application, but they are web application at the core, but they look and feel more like a native application, and they also make use of the hardware and the other capabilities available inside the smartphone. And network bandwidth consumption is also an important thing because we are carrying our phones everywhere, and it is not like an application which runs on a desktop or a laptop connected to the internet. So and when you are connected to the internet, it's assumed that you are connected to the Wi-Fi or Ethernet, and you don't have to worry about network consumption. But when you are accessing an application on your mobile phone, what happens is you have to be wary of how much data is being consumed because most probably you are being charged. So network bandwidth consumption is also an important test which needs to be taken care of for mobile applications. And of course, integration testing, when I talk about integration testing, any application these days makes use of multiple third-party services, integration with multiple third-party services, and also integration within the other applications altogether. So integration testing has to be done to ensure that all the integrations work just fine, and also the application itself or the module itself or any new feature which is being added works fine across the entire application. And performance testing takes care of how much time it takes for the application to load data or how effectively it displays data or are all the capabilities working just, and how fast or how much time, of course, less time is expected. And security testing is an important thing these days because of hackers exploiting the vulnerabilities. So security testing is also an important thing to be taken care of in mobile application testing. And finally, the most important of all is device fragmentation. So device fragmentation, what happens is you cannot assume that everyone is using the same operating system or the same version of the operating system. Let it be Android or iOS, there are multiple people who are still using the older operating system or they are on the older devices altogether. So any application which is created newly or which is updated newly also has to be taken care has to be taken to ensure that these applications work just fine on the older devices running older operating system as well or different operating system. So that has to be taken care of, and that is an important test when it comes to mobile application testing. So these are not a conclusive, this is not like a test which is, these are not the only test we will be conducting for mobile application testing. There are multiple tests you will be conducting, but these are some of the important ones I thought we should be discussing. So with that said, how does the Zoho QEngine help? So the Zoho QEngine, as you already know, is a test automation tool, and it helps you with creating test cases using no code, low code, and pro code options. And for mobile application testing, we have specifically simulators and emulators, iOS simulators and Android emulators. You can actually test your applications on them, and Zoho Engine, it is a minimal setup. You just have to set up a local agent and ensure that the simulators and emulators are connected. It is a very small process. And of course, Zoho Engine being a test automation tool, you can expect to create your test cases and expect to automate those test cases, test executions on the Hook engine. And any test case, let's say the element is broken, the mobile in the UI element is broken inside your application for the test cases. The Hook engine is smart enough to ensure that it is providing you a different set of locators altogether, because every time a test case is created within the element repository, multiple locators are added for the elements. So it is easier for you to ensure that there are no flaky tests altogether. And of course, since we discussed in the previous sessions as well, the USP of Zoho Engine is it's easier for you to write test cases for Android and iOS as well. Let's say you are creating an application, a similar application for iOS and Android. The same functionality can be tested using Zoho Engine with multiple test cases within a single test case file. So we'll be discussing all of that in detail when we go for the demo. And of course, the results dashboard gives you an overview of the all the test results, and use case access control ensures that you are able to ensure organizational hierarchy within your team every time a test case is created or which test case needs to be made live and so on. So let's start off with test creation. And as I was saying, just like the web and web application testing that we saw in the previous webinar, for mobile application testing also, Zoho Engine supports no-code, low-code, and pro-code for test creation. So what that means is using the no-code recorder, you can actually record your test cases very easily. You don't necessarily need to have any sort of coding knowledge for that. And the low code builder lets you create test cases by simply dragging and dropping actions which are present on the left hand side, frequently used actions for mobile application testing. You can just drag it onto the editor and create a test case. And finally, the pro code editor is easier for someone who wants to create test cases from scratch. And as we discussed in the previous thing itself, webinar itself, it's easier for you to create test cases. And all of these test cases or the actions that we were talking about for web, it is different from the actions available for mobile. So when we are looking at a test case editor for mobile application, mobile platform, so the actions on the left hand side also will change accordingly. It is not the same as the web platform, or as the actions for available for the web platform. We'll be seeing that in action in some time. And as I mentioned, single click cross platform switching. So you can actually create test cases for iOS and Android within a single test case. And Zoho Engine also gives you the access to functions and variables within the test cases. So variable is nothing but a container which will store values. It could be an integer, it could be a string, it could be anything. You can actually access them within a test case, so that when you don't want to repeat a value or add a particular value every single time. And there are multiple repositories for mobile elements repository. What happens is every time a test case is created and a mobile UI element is added, so all the different locators that are available for that particular UI element is added to the repository. And finally, there is the files repository wherein you can actually access the files, .apk files and .ipa files. You can store all of the files or your own application within these repository for you to test them later on. And once your test case is created, how do you execute them on Zoho QEngine? So this is a bit different from what we saw in the previous webinar. What you'll have to do is there is a minor setup. You'll have to set up an agent first, and once a local agent is set up, you can actually access the iOS simulator and Android emulator on your local system to run test cases on them on these devices, like your for your particular application. The application will be installed on this emulator and simulator, the virtual devices, and you can run tests on them. And also the Zoho QEngine gives you the access to test on real devices. Real devices, it's very simple. You just have to plug it to your system and you'll be able to test them in no time. And for iOS, for Android, it's straight away plugging in. For iOS, there is a small bit of work needed, but it is actually very, very simple. And Zoho QEngine gives you the access to test MFA. Most of the applications these days support MFA. So let's say your application also is protected by MFA, you can test that as well with Zoho QEngine. And self-healing is an important part of Zoho engine. So what happens is any element which is broken, element locator is broken and your test case is not able to access that particular UI element. So Zoho engine offers the next available locator within the elements repository for that particular element, so that your test case runs just fine. And you also can change it once the test case is done. So there is environment specific variable. So anytime an environment is run, your test cases, your variables within that particular environment will take a different value altogether for the particular environment. And of course, all of this makes sense only if we have automated testing. So Zoho Engine, as I mentioned, is a test automation tool. You can automate all of your test cases within Zoho Engine. And once your test execution is done, you want to analyze the test executions. What you could do is you can head on to the results dashboard, wherein you will have access to all of the test runs, test plans, as I showed you in the previous webinar. So all of your test plans, their executions, how many test cases failed, and what is the reason for that, with screenshot logs for individual test cases. Everything is available for you. And also, the Zoho Engine gives you the access to the run history for each test case. Let's say there is a particular test case and it is failing multiple times. You might want to check the run history to check what is the particular issue that test case is facing, so that you can rectify that or discuss that with the development team to take care of that test case altogether. And finally, user access control ensures that not everyone gets to create a test case or make it live. So a test case has to be approved by a manager, and it is also based on your organizational hierarchy. So there is admin and manager and tester and developer roles available. So based on the roles, user will be having access to the test cases. It can be edit or approval and everything. Okay, so without wasting much time, let's look at the use case scenarios we will be discussing in today's session. So for the first use case scenario, what we'll be doing is we are focusing on an integration between Amazon and Goodreads. So what we will be doing is we'll be opening up the Amazon application within the Android emulator, and we'll be searching for a book. So within that book, we'll be looking for a rating for that book from Goodreads. So generally, when you are accessing a book inside Amazon, it will show you the rating for the book inside Amazon's website. So now, with addition to that, there will be another rating from Goodreads. We'll be verifying that that is visible. So if it is visible, it is an indication that the integration between Amazon and Goodreads has worked just fine. So that will be our first use case scenario. So second use case scenario, again, we'll be using Amazon. But this time what we'll be doing is we'll be searching for a book, preferably an ebook and something which is free, so that it's easier for us to proceed with purchase and everything. We'll be searching for an ebook and adding that ebook to the cart. And finally, we'll be completing the purchase for that ebook, and we'll be accessing that ebook inside the Kindle application. So once we have purchased the book, since we already have an integration with Kindle, so what happens is now the book will be added to our Kindle library. So from within the Amazon app itself, we'll be clicking on reading that book so that it will take us to the Kindle app inside the Amazon Kindle app inside the emulator itself, the same emulator. So that will be the second use case scenario. And for the final use case scenario, we'll be making use of the integration and the workflow that we created for the previous webinar. In the previous webinar, there was a booking application within Zoho. So we created an appointment, and anyone creates an appointment or registers for an appointment from that a booking form, an entry will be created inside the booking and an entry will be created within meetings. And later on, the data which was added in the booking form during registration, it will be collected inside CRM. An entry will be made in CRM. So we'll be checking if all of this integration works. It was working just fine last time. So what we'll be doing is we'll be checking if the same integration works fine on mobile as well. And also we'll be trying to add an entry to the mobile application, mobile CRM application as well. So these are the three different scenarios we'll be looking at today. So without wasting much time, let's get into the product demo. So as soon as you enter Zoho QEngine, this is the first thing you'll be seeing. This is called as the overview dashboard of the entire project. So all of the projects that you are currently enrolled into will be visible here. So I'm currently entering the Zoho Zilker Watch project, and as soon as you enter the project, it will give you an overview dashboard of the project itself. So within this, you can see how many test cases are there and all of the important essential things that is needed for the project. It just gives you an overview of the project. So the very first thing we'll be doing is, let me zoom in a bit. On the left-hand side, there's something called as a test case. We'll be starting off with the test cases, just like in the previous webinar. I discussed it in detail, but again, I just want to show it to you. So this is where your different types of uh, platforms are available here. So the web browser, Android, iOS, all the different platforms are available here. And as you can see, the actions are also different. And this is where you have the different modes. You have the Pro Code editor, uh, low code builder, and of course the recording feature, no code recorder for you to work on to create test cases. And once the test cases are created, you'll be looking at them inside the test suites. So all of the test cases can be aligned inside the arranged based on the execution you want them to run, the order in which you want them to run. You can arrange them here. And within the test plans, all of the test suites that we created, we can actually arrange them and also automating them when you want these test cases to run, the scheduling of all of them and other features and everything that you are associated with test execution is available here, the environments and everything. And finally, once your test cases are done, executing the test cases, you can actually look for the test cases here and what happened to the particular test case. Let's say I'll just quickly click on them. What happened to the test case and did it run fine or was there an issue, and everything can be looked at here. And of course, the users dashboard gives you the access to all the users inside your organization. And then there is the multiple repositories that I was talking about. So we'll be starting off with the variables repository. Variable repository is nothing but you have access to the different variables. You can also create new ones here. And environment variables can also be managed from here. And the elements repository gives you access to all of the different elements inside your application, not just one application, all of the applications that you have used, or in simple words, all of the applications that you'll be testing within your project, all of the elements will be available here, and their locators and everything is available here. And the files repository gives you access to the different files that you'll be using for testing. And as I mentioned, MFA, you can actually create the time-based one-time passwords. You can configure them here for proceeding with multi-factor authentication. And yeah, there is agents and then the tunnel feature which helps you test applications which are available behind firewall on the cloud itself. So for that you need the tunnel feature. So that's a quick view of everything. So without wasting much time, let's get started with this is the agent that I was talking about. I'm opening up the agent. So let's get started with creating a new test case. So the first one, if you do remember, it was about Goodreads and Amazon integration. So I'm just going to call it Goodreads Amazon. So where am I creating this test case? I'm creating this test case within the webinars module. Integration with Goodreads. Just a minute. So again, it's inside the webinars module. Integration with Goodreads. It's creating a test case now. A test case has been created. Now we are trying to create a test case using the no code recorder. So I'll just click on the record button. And before we get into that, I'll just quickly want to show you the emulators that we are going to be working on. So these are the emulators and simulator that we'll be working on. So these are available here, and these of course have the applications installed on them, whatever the application that I was talking about. In this case, for the first scenario, we'll be looking at Amazon and Goodreads. Both of them are integrated, installed on this device. So let's just quickly go on to Android. The very first step, we are creating an test case for the Android platform. So let's click on uh, recording button and agent. In this case, the agent is MS. So we added that agent and the device on which we'll be running the particular or creating the test case and the application. It will take some time. The integration between the applications Amazon and Goodreads is already created and it is available on the emulator. So what we'll be doing right now is opening up the Amazon application on the emulator and searching for a particular book. So when we search for a particular book, let me move that aside. Okay. As you can see here, it opened up this particular emulator. We will not be using or creating the test case here. What instead we'll be doing is we'll be uh, interacting with this emulator here. So the very first step is to search for a book. I'm clicking on the Searching for the book now. The text box opened. Opening up the test results. Oh, sorry, the search results. So there are multiple books available here. I'm just going to click on one of these books. You can see here, it opened up the page for the particular book. And if it is visible for you, so you can see here it says 4.1 on Goodreads. So it says 4.7 on Amazon, but on Goodreads it is 4.1. So now this on Goodreads part is an indication that the integration works. So what I'm going to do is I'm quickly going to assert this text. Ensure that the text on Goodreads is available on the page, the books page. So it's easier for me to ensure that the integration works just fine. So I'm done with that. So I'll just click on save and exit. Just like that, our test case will be created. So the test case is created. As you can see, it talks about the locators and everything. You can edit all of that here. But for now, I'm not editing anything. So I'm just going to save, click on save. So my test case is created. Okay. So now if I want, I can make a few changes here. But for now, I feel that everything should work just fine. But anytime it is always a good habit to ensure that everything works just fine by ensuring that all of the locators and everything is visible properly. But just for the sake of making you all see what can go wrong or anything, if at all anything can go wrong, what we'll do is we'll run this particular test case. It's already saved. We'll run this particular test case. Again, choose the agent and the environment, the APK file, and run this. So this test case is created. So now what will happen is this test case will run on the emulator we created the test case on. Of course, we can run it on a different emulator as well, but for the sake of understanding, we are actually running it on this emulator. So essentially what would happen is our test case would be created and that particular test case will be run on multiple devices over and over again. So it is connected to the agent. As you can see, we are already inside the whatever is happening there. You can, this is what it's exactly happening on the emulator, and whatever is happening here, that is being relayed here inside the application, inside the Zoho QEngine. So as you can see here, we had a different book. If you do remember, the book had like a blue cover, but right now what happened was it searched for Siddhartha book and a different book came up altogether, but still it was smart enough to identify that hey, there is a broken locator. This seems a bit different from the locator that which I already encountered. So it rectified that particular encounter, healed that locator, or gave you a different locator altogether, and the test case ran just fine. And inside the self-healing tab as well, you can see what had happened. Now you have the option to click on the approve. I mean, click on the change, whatever change was done here, you can click on approve and that will be reflected across the test case for all of your teams. But I'm not doing that as of now. But as you can see, the test case run just fine. So that is our first use case scenario. I'll just close this. Let's look at the second one. Create the second use case scenario. So if you do remember, the second use case scenario was Kindle with Kindle. Again, inside the webinars module, I've created the test case. We are running a bit short on time, and that's why I didn't write a description. Now that we have created a new test case, let's start recording the test case for this one. We'll start off as usual. We'll start off with selecting the agent, followed by the environment and the file. I'll click on the record button. It should open up in a couple of seconds. So while it is opening, let's quickly discuss the second use case scenario. So in this use case scenario, we'll be starting off with opening up the Amazon application, and within the application, we'll be searching for a book and purchasing a book, an ebook. So that ebook will be checking if once the book purchase has been completed, it will create a new read now button, and once clicking on that read now button, it should open up in the Kindle application. So this way we'll be able to check both the integration and also if the redirection to the Kindle application works via the read now button. So ideally we would be like clicking on the search tab and entering the book name and so on. But since we are a bit short on time and it requires few more steps, so let's make it easier. I've already added the book to the cart. Let me quickly click on the cart. So the cart button, the book is already there. So I'm just going to click on purchasing the book. So once I click on proceed to buy, book purchase should be completed. There shouldn't be this much delay, but it is connected to the emulator. What happens is all your actions, which are the actions that you perform here, all of that will be performed on the emulator as well. You can do the reverse as well. You can actually make changes, or you can do certain actions on the emulator itself, and that will get reflected here. But we generally do not recommend that because this is much more reliable to create your test case the very first time. Because as I mentioned in the previous webinars as well, the very first time you are creating a particular test case, it's important that everything works fine. Let it be a scroll, let it be a click, everything should work just fine. So, okay, so now that I see that the book is added, so essentially what I would do is, since the book is added, it should take like another 15 to 20 seconds for the book to get added to the Kindle library. So what I'm going to do is, because when we are trying to recreate this scenario and run the test case, so in that scenario, uh, the test script will run without any delay. So what we will do is we will actually wait for it. So around 15 seconds. Let's wait 15 seconds. So as soon as the book purchase is complete, I'm creating the test case in such a way that it will wait for 15 seconds. So you can either do it here itself, or and so once the test case is created, the test script is created, you can actually make changes there as well. So as you can see, I clicked on read now button within the Amazon application, but it opened the Kindle app. And within the Kindle app, as you can see, the book that I recently purchased is available here for me to interact or read in this case. So I'm clicking on the book, and just for the sake of ensuring that everything works fine, I'll scroll one more time. Everything works just fine. So I'm happy with the test case. I'll click on save and exit. Okay, so my test case is created. You can save it. Feel that everything is working just fine. So now what I would do is to ensure that the test case, when I run the test case, to ensure that everything works just fine as it should, opening up the Amazon application. So this is the emulator that we were working on. So I'm opening up the Amazon application. I'm going to the content library and removing that book from the library altogether. So this is the book, deleting this book. So as you can see, I've deleted that book. And if you do remember, originally we had the book inside the cart. So I'll do the same again. An ebook, sorry. So I'll add this book to the cart. Okay. So as you can see, the book is added to the cart and it is not in the library as well. Now let's run this test case. Agent, environment, and of course the file, and we'll run the test case. So ideally, when you are trying out something like this, you'll be creating a test case, and that test case you'll be making minor tweaks to it. Let's say you want to check for multiple other scenarios. You want to check for other books as well and things like that. So you'll be trying it out with different use case scenarios. So that is the reason I just wanted to, kind of go back and delete everything from the content library so that it's easier for you to visualize like every single time when you are purchasing a book and does the integration work, does the redirection button work and everything. You can test it out by creating a single test case and tweaking it multiple times, or you can use data-driven testing. Data-driven testing will be available pretty soon on Zoho QEngine. So as you can see, everything seems to work. The book is added to the cart, and I believe right now it is waiting. The book is available in the cart, and it worked. I mean, it clicked on the book. So you can see this is the screenshot log. Sorry, I forgot to show it to you in the previous use case scenario, but in the previous webinars you might have seen this. So screenshot log is an easy way to kind of showcase the test case, how the test case is running, and what happens to the individual lines of test cases and everything. You can actually view it here. So this is exactly what happened in the emulator, and I see that our test case has passed successfully. So that is a good sign. So with that, let's move on to the last test case for last use case scenario for the day. So this is CRM and leads. So let's create the test case. For lack of time, again, I'm not slight delay. Okay, so the test case has been created. So now, before we get into the test case, there are a couple of things I want to show you. This will be the IO simulator we'll be working on for the last use case scenario. Let me close the simulator now because the work is done. Let it close in the background. So meanwhile, if you do remember, or those of you attended the previous session, you would know that we created workflow with Zoho bookings, wherein we created a bookings form wherein someone can actually enter their details and an appointment will be booked. And bookings had an integrations with meetings and Zoho CRM. So whatever data was collected during the appointment, that will be pushed directly to CRM, and it will be the data will be captured here. And similarly, within the meetings app, when the meeting appointment is fixed, the meeting entry would be added to the meetings applications as well. So that was the workflow, and we for now, because we are a bit short on time, I've already created an appointment, and the appointment is now reflecting across meeting and inside the bookings applications as well, and the data has also been added to the leads inside Zoho CRM. But this is for web application. So now let me quickly show this to you. In CRM application, though, this is the view, the mobile CRM application in iOS. This is the view, and as you can see, the meeting entry is available on the home page. Just wanted to show this to you quickly before we start creating the test case. So now, as usual, let's first select the platform. It is iOS. Click on record, the agent, and of course the simulator, and finally the application. So now what happens is in this use case scenario, we'll be opening up the CRM application, mobile CRM application on the iOS platform. And within the application, first we'll be verifying that the meeting has been created. So we created a meeting, right? So that meeting to check if the integration and everything is working fine. So first we'll check if the meeting has been created, and after that we'll be going into the leads module and adding an entry. Okay. So I see that meeting entry has been created. We'll quickly click on that, and inside that, the text requirement discussion. So this indicates that the meeting has been created. So we just need the text. We click on assert text. Okay, with that, let's go back to the home page. Now we'll quickly move down to the leads module. Inside the leads module, let's add a lead. So now all of these fields we need to fill out. We'll start off with the company name. Entering a value. So some random name for the company. Okay, done. Clicking on the done button. And then our first name. Okay, first name is added. Last name. Sorry about that. There seems to be an issue. Okay, the last name is also added. Now, just to be extra sure, let's add an email ID as well. And zilker.com. We'll be verifying this later on. So sorry about that. Sometimes what happens is these fields aren't visible clearly. So first time when you are creating the test case, it might be a bit finicky, but no issues. Once you create the test case, you can tweak the test case in such a way that the next time uh, something like this or the system is trying to create a data on its own, it will do just fine. Okay, so a data has been added, as you can see here. I'll just click on save and exit. We could have gone inside the entry and verified that, but we are already pretty late. So I just quickly wanted to show you that we can add an entry as well. So now we have created the test case. So what did I mean by ensuring that everything works just fine? So what we'll do is every time you see that a new data is added to all of these uh, entries, so what you can do is this is the locator's name. So it is going to search for this locator's name and tap on it. And after that, it's going to try and set a value. So this way you can be extra careful that it doesn't go wrong. Similarly, for this one, it is already added. Do the same for all of them. Okay, save. So now let's quickly tweak it a bit. Of course, you can change the name, but I just want to show it to you that you can actually change things here, or you can change the values here as well. But just for the sake, let me delete the entry from here. Okay, so there is no entry. You can, of course, change the name and everything here itself, but agent, environment, and of course the file, and we are now running the test case. Okay, so everything seems to work just fine now, and the test case also passed. And yeah, so thank you.